You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike.
Welcome
Now,
into the Psych
here's
with Mike
Psych with
Library.
Mike.
This is Dr. Michael Mahan here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So we are regrouping and bringing the show back. We had an episode last week where we talked about why we're bringing that back and what our plans are. And we talked specifically about aging. Was there anything that we left on the table with that?
Well, if there was, I've probably forgotten it.
Okay.
I'm older than dirt.
So how does that make you feel?
Ambivalent.
Ambivalent.
There are times when...
Which technically is not an emotion.
Oh, I hate when you do that.
I know.
There are times when I feel absolutely great about where I am in life. Life for me is good. I'm on the narrow end of the spectrum. I have less in front of me than I have behind me. I know that. I'm at peace with that. It feels good. I feel that I have done things I wanted to do and still doing things that I want to do. On the other hand, part of me is jealous and embittered because I see younger people who have longer than I have, and I'm like, well, damn, I want that. And I think I see and know things that I want to do or have that I won't be able to do or have. For instance, I one of my major life goals and positive experiences is travel. I love to travel. I want to travel. There are places I have not been that I want to go. And I am not going to make it to all of them. And I know that. And part of me is like, gall darn it. And the other part is, well, next week we're going to one. And you know, we've been to one last month. And you know, so it's a balance. It's a juggling.
Yeah. And you're just checking things off the bucket list.
Except I've refused to formally have a bucket list because that makes it more concrete reality for me.
I gotcha.
You got 10 things to do and then you can die. I don't want to do that. I have a whole bucket full of stuff, but I don't have a bucket list.
Gotcha. So one of the reasons why we came back was because we have this book deal that we have engaged the process of, and we just recently had our first chapter review edit, which I thought was fantastic. But the first chapter of the book is talking about emotions. Yeah. And we have been talking about that. So that's why when I said, how do you feel? You said ambivalent. I said, that's not technically emotion. Right. One of the things that I know and that we have written about is that even though both of us use a lot of different language and we usually begin the process of understanding what's going on in terms of psychologically in our clients, we a lot of times end up in the same space. So for you, do you want to give us a synopsis of what your thoughts about emotions are?
Well, it becomes a challenge working with you on this issue sometimes because you're so fundamentally wrong. And I have to work you through that and try to get you to a place where you can say, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. And you really resist doing that. Well, I don't understand that, but you do. But your focus is on the biological, as I understand your concept that you tried to write in the first chapter of the book. What I read was you believe there are physiological processes that are feelings that then break through into our consciousness and our awarenesses, and then we put labels to those, but that the physiology exists first. And I don't understand it that way. And the overlap seems to be we both recognize that. Let's talk about child development. If you have a newborn infant, that infant is going to have what I call emotions, like anger, or frustration, or sadness, or fear. Those are labels that you don't like to use. But that child's going to feel those things. And then my understanding of child development is that the parents holding that child and working with that child develop a language with that child. And the child is initially pre-verbal, and they don't have any words. They just have experience. And so if there's something like they're hungry or they're wet or they're uncomfortable or their stomach hurts, They try to express that, or they do just express it, and then the parents have to interpret it. And the parents are like, so what is it? Does your tummy ache? You know, are you mad? Are you angry? And babies do things like they punch or they bite in their anger or their frustration. Well, those are labels that we use to put on the behavior that we see. And then we begin the process of teaching them vocabulary so that the baby learns the vocabulary and begins to have words. And eventually the baby begins to use those words. And probably most babies' first word is mama or daddy or something like that. But pretty quickly they move on to other words. And I used to get in trouble with my friends because I really believe in the importance of a well-developed vocabulary. We talk in terms of an active vocabulary and a passive vocabulary. Most people have an active vocabulary of around 1,000 words and a passive vocabulary of about 4,000 or 5,000 words, which means active are the ones that I use. These are words that I use that I'm comfortable with. If you use, causes me no confusion, no distraction. A passive vocabulary are words that I recognize when someone else uses them. So if you use a big word, an educated word that I don't know, medulla oblongata, then I can use context clues to figure out what in the hell you're talking about. Or I can go look it up in a dictionary, or I can find out what it is. But then it becomes still not a word I use, but a word that I can recognize, a word that I can understand. So we teach our children words, and then they start to use those words. And most babies pick up 1, 2, 5 words, probably nouns and verbs. Hungry, mother. And some babies do that, and then they stop communicating altogether for a little while, and then they speak in sentences, 3 and 4 word sentences. Other babies still hang in there with one word, but they develop 10, 15, 20 words. And as a therapist and as a teacher, my argument for parents was always, do not speak baby talk to your child. Do not let your grandparents speak baby talk to their grandchild. Don't let other people talk baby talk. Babies need to learn the words. You need to teach them the words. You want them to be able to say, there's a dog. And initially, every animal's a dog. You teach them dog. Right. You teach them tree. Everything's a tree. You teach car. Everything's a car. Then you begin to qualify and modify. There's a car. Yes, that's a red car. That's a black car. That's a white car. That's a Ford car. That's a Mercedes-Benz. That's a Lamborghini. You teach them different words that qualify and expand their vocabulary. So then they become more capable of communicating their status, their needs, their desires, their understandings, and more capable of understanding what you communicate to them.
So, and you're absolutely right that I am very much focused on the biology. And what I haven't asked you this question, so I don't know. I'll be looking for your answers. But so do you obviously don't deny that the biology happens.
No.
But you minimize its
focus on it the way that you do. I don't see it as the foundational start point. And you do, which is fine.
No, I absolutely. So, but for you, if I'm hearing you correctly, your position is that the language is what is essentially important for the child to begin to recognize and understand the emotions.
Yes, I do. And I say that to in therapy to clients all the time. If you have feelings, for instance, anger is an example. In our society, in our culture, and every culture is slightly different, to dramatically different, but in our culture, anger is not something that we encourage. We don't want you to recognize it. We don't want you to deal with it. We don't want you to express it. And if you need to express it, then we want to limit how you can do so. You can't. We teach babies you can't hit, you can't bite, you get mad, you can't throw things and break things. You have to find some other way to modulate that emotion. So people suppress it. And I've had a million clients who've come in and said, I'm not an angry person. I don't do anger. And I tell them, it's original issue equipment. You can't not do anger. You can't not get angry and be angry. The question then becomes, when you are angry, what do you do with it? How do you use it? Can you use it productively? Do you use it destructively? And in therapy, then we can begin the process. And so what I try to teach my clients is you have to feel it. That'd be the physiological, biological component. I feel it surge. My blood pressure goes up. My face gets red. My ears get red. My throat gets tight. Whatever it is that I recognize, you have to label it. Oh, that's anger. And I work with teaching my clients gradations of anger. I'm miffed. I'm irritated. I'm pissed off. I'm angry. I'm rageful. It's not like I'm fine, I'm rageful.
Right.
And then you have to externalize it. You have to get it out. You have to label it, and then you have to say it. You can write it in a journal. You can talk to God out loud in your car by yourself, or you can tell somebody else.
Yeah.
You can sit here and tell me, I got so angry at my wife yesterday because she drank the last soda, and then I had to go to the store. You can say those things, and in the process of learning the gradations, then you learn to make interventions at less destructive, less impactful points. So you don't have road rage and run somebody off the road and kill them and then have to go to prison. You can say, I'm really irritated because I've caught every light this morning. I'm running late and I'm feeling the pressure of being late, and that's making me mad. You don't just run over somebody because they pulled out in front of you and they hadn't warmed up their car and it's running slow and they're not going anywhere. So you want to ram them. And you do want to.
Right.
But you have to modulate that.
Exactly.
And so I think the vocabulary and the process of expressing and externalizing it are the critical ingredients. But they do start with the recognition of the affective component.
Yeah, and to me that's the rub in therapy, because I've had dozens of clients, I'm sure you have had this experience also, where the client actually perceives that they were fine, and then all of a sudden they were rageful.
Yes.
And they don't recognize the intervening
I remember
phenomena.
working with a family of 4. Mother, father, 2 kids, 2 teenage girls. And the mother was butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, Southern lady sweet, about everything. Never lost her temper, never smelled anything bad, never would say who farted. It's like she just was this wonderful, saintly woman. And the family all said, she's really angry. She's really angry. And I kept saying to her, they're saying that you're really angry. And she said, oh, no, they don't understand. I'm not. I'm so not. So I said, which I often do in therapy, I said, okay, for this to work in a productive way, I need to hear you accurately. And I'm hearing you on 2 channels. I get your nonverbals and I get your verbals. You say to me with a smile in your voice that you're not angry, but I'm watching your shoulders. I'm watching your eyes. I see a muscle pop in your cheek when we talk about this. And to me, nonverbally, that says angry. And she'll say, oh, no, I'm not. I'm fine. Okay. Is it all right if I keep pointing out to you whenever I observe this disconnect, and you tell me, and I'll believe you. If you say, no, I'm wrong, then I'll be wrong. I'm okay with being wrong. But it's so important to me to understand accurately that I want to keep telling you what I'm seeing so you can keep giving me feedback so that I can see you accurately. And she said, oh, yeah, that'd be great. You do that. So we did that for a couple of weeks in a row, and I'm pointing this out and pointing this out. And she's like, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Then one day she was in there, and she slammed, all of a sudden, she slammed her hand down on the arm of the chair, and she said, gall darn right, I'm angry. And boy, she just vomited all over the family and me, her rage that had been stored up and not released for years. And that was the point at which that family began to make progress, because then mother could be angry, honestly, knowingly. They could all acknowledge it, honestly, knowingly. And so they didn't have to play all kinds of games about who screwed up, who made a mistake. Let's focus on this child and say, you're the reason the family's not working because you made a C in math. And that wasn't the issue.
But, that's an excellent point that we also talked about in that first chapter, is this idea that just because you deny an emotion doesn't mean you're not having an emotion.
Yes,
and that's where I think the physiology is so important, is because you've changed your body physically.
And I agree with you. And I'm just calling it nonverbal, and you're calling it physiology.
Yeah. And we can spend more time talking about my take maybe in a future episode. But
we got 5 minutes now if you want to take it.
No. But your body has already changed physically because you've had this emotion. And if you deny it, that stays in your body because that emotion has to be expressed. Yeah. And if you refuse to express it, that energy stays in your body.
So that can be blood pressure, that can be a headache, that can be a heart attack. Like an ulcer.
Right, but exactly. But it leads to very real physiological consequences
Yes.
because ulcers, migraine headaches, all of those things have been associated clinically with the repression of anger. Some people say, I swallow my anger. And when you do that, you hold it inside. And that's true for any emotion. Then it's going to still have that physiological consequence in your body.
Well, some people eat their anger.
Sure.
Or eat their emotion that they can't afford to feel or express. And so then they put on weight and they're like, why am I putting on weight, or why am I heavy at this level? And the answer is because you literally put food in your mouth and
Right.
try to orally gratify whatever the distress is, which is what babies do. When little babies are having distress, we put a bottle in their mouth or we feed them. And so we teach them at the very beginning, one of the first learnings is something's wrong, eat.
Yeah.
And then it'll be better.
And it's also true that you have more serotonin receptors, which is a neurotransmitter that's associated with depression. You have more of those in your gut than you do in your brain. So endocrinologists, people who and people who work with the gut.
A lot of research and literature out there right now about the gut biome.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And so we do eat to soothe our emotions because when we eat, we get activation of those mood receptors that make us feel better, and we think.
And it's a short-term physiological fix. If we eat pleasure foods, if I like ice cream and I teach myself, if I'm upset or distressed or bored or angry or irritated or whatever, and I eat some ice cream, I'm going to feel better. And so then I'll make sure I always have ice cream or M&Ms or whatever it might be that would work. And so then we find pleasure foods, we find comfort foods. And often if you ask a grown-up, what are your comfort foods from childhood? And they'll go back and talk about special meals their family had or special foods that they ate when they were upset or for special events. Like it was my birthday and I always had this on my birthday. My wife, one of her comfort foods, special foods, is strawberry rhubarb pie that her grandmother used to bake for her birthday every year. And now Phyllis will make strawberry rhubarb pie whenever she gets to a certain mood tonality. It's all of a sudden, and seasonally when the rhubarb is in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So she sort of subconsciously knows it's rhubarb season. Now I can dump all this stuff into a rhubarb pie and feel better.
But I do want people to also know that you don't have to go through this process in therapy. I know that when I got out of grad school, I decided I was going to work on something. I wanted to find something that I could use to practice cognitive restructuring. And the thing that I ended up lighting on was the idea of road rage. I used to get so rageful driving my car because of all the stupid people who are also driving their cars. And I said, I knew intellectually at that time, they have the right to drive their car just as much as you have the right to drive your car. But what I had to start doing was first to be able to recognize when I was in emotional distress. So sometimes people can't recognize that until it's pretty extreme.
Yes.
But the minute that you recognize it, then you have to say to yourself, do I need to be experiencing this? Is there a valid reason for me to be experiencing this emotion in this moment to this extreme?
I don't like that verbiage, valid reason. You
Okay.
feel what you feel. Whether you put it, if it's valid in whose eyes?
Well, is it valid in that? Is it
congruent?
Congruent?
Yeah. So this is something that I want to come back to and discuss in our next podcast if we can make a note of it. Men, it is my contention that men are acculturated to suppress emotional expression and to be unaware of their own feelings. Women, on the other hand, are not. They are more acculturated to be in tune with their emotions, to be in touch with their emotions, to be aware of feeling their emotions. They may not be allowed societally to do anything with it, but they are trained to be conscious of it. So regularly in marriage counseling, I would have women who would come in and talk about, this is how I feel, this is how I feel, blah, blah, blah. And the man would say to him, well, what do you think, or how do you feel? And his answer would be, I don't know. And so the underlying process for a lot of marriage counseling is to get men to start to know things that they unconsciously know but haven't put words to.
So you want to expand on that?
Yeah.
In a future show?
Because we're running out of time this week.
So then there's two things that we want to do in a future show. I will talk about the biology, my perspective on emotion, and we want to expand on this idea that men are taught or conditioned to
Sexual
have
discrimination in the learning process.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if I like sexual discrimination, but yes, there's clearly a difference.
Does it make you angry?
Does it make me angry that there's a difference?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
It makes me glad because that's
If
good
I
for my
asked,
business.
If I asked your wife, would she say it does?
What?
The
That it makes me angry?
Disparity between the ability to recognize and express emotions for one gender, but not the other gender.
I don't know what she would say.
Well, maybe you can ask her.
I would ask her that. Yeah.
All right.
So thanks for tuning in. The music that appears in Psych with Mike and Brett is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.